Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the show. John Henry Soto here with you as always. It is 7 a.m. here in Nashville, Tennessee, June 25th, 2026. And we're going to dive right in because we got a lot to cover today. Yesterday, we went over how to build your own live stream or podcast and all the things that you need for that. And today, we're going to cover actually how to be a better interviewer, how not to suck at it. Now, first of all, let me just be clear that at the beginning of anything that you do like this, you're not going to be that good. You're kind of gonna, you might suck a little bit. But the reason I'm doing this show is because I want to give you some information that will actually help you not suck. That's the key thing, right? So you want to be able to at least start the process going like you're going to have a good opportunity to do something that's positive and you're going to actually have a good time starting it out and you're not going to feel bad if you have a show that's not too rough. This is actually going to prevent those beginning shows from being rough. Okay. So one of the most valuable skills a host, podcaster, filmmaker, or content creator can develop is the ability to conduct a great interview. Many people assume interviewing is simply asking questions, but the best interviews are really conversations. A great interviewer helps guests feel comfortable, creates an environment where authentic stories can emerge, and guides the discussion in a way that benefits both the guest and the audience. The goal is not to show how much you know, right? It's to help your guests share insights, experiences, and wisdom that others can learn from. So that's the point of the interview is you want to pull from them what they have. And I tell the guests right off the bat at the beginning of the show, this is the purpose. The purpose is because you have an experience that my audience, a lot of the audience members, most of the audience members do not have and that I don't have. And if they're a legendary experience, a legendary musician, let's just say we had on Steve Smith from Journey, right? The drummer for Journey. Now, what's it like playing a stadium? I don't know what it's like playing a stadium. And most people watching on the show or listening do not know what it feels like to play a stadium, right? So that becomes a very, very important kind of thing to try to figure out and to try to learn from them. And not to say that we're all going to then play stadiums, but it gives you a perspective of confront of something that we've never confronted before. So if you talk to an award-winning filmmaker, which I have, what's it like when you get that big award, when you get an Academy Award, or when you get an Emmy or Tony or whatever award it is, right? What's the other one? It's a Oscar, a Grammy, a Tony, and an Emmy, right? That's the EGOT. So you start trying to maneuver the conversation into them, and I tell them right off the bat, we want to know how you did this, how did it feel, and all these things. So Brian says very true, and yes. So let's see. Over the years, interviewing musicians, filmmakers, entrepreneurs, authors, and industry professionals has taught me that preparation makes a tremendous difference. Yes, and definitely going to cover that. Before every interview, I try to learn as much as possible about the guest's background, accomplishments, challenges, and current projects. This preparation allows me to move beyond the surface level questions and explore topics that reveal the lessons, struggles, and experiences that shape their journey. The more prepared you are, the more likely you are to uncover meaningful stories. So this is what I do. I research a lot about the guests, right? And I also go look at interviews because I want to feel their tone. I want to see what their tone is like in the interview. I want to see if they're being interviewed. I've seen interviews where people get interviewed by, interviewers that are not really that good, that are sort of just asking the questions off a script and being self-serving in a way, like, oh, I got this great guest here. People are gonna love this because I have this guest here. Well, that's all nice and everything, but you want to get as much information on the guest as you possibly can. Try to find old interviews with them or her. Try to read interviews also. There's written interviews that you might be able to read if they're, if they're a high caliber A-lister. You want to you already kind of have a lot of information on them, right? You have a lot of material. But if if they're on their way, if they're approaching success, or if they're very successful, but people not household names, that happens too. Very successful businessmen that I've interviewed, real estate, very wealthy real estate people that I've interviewed, not household names, but it's harder to get material on them because there's not a lot written on them. There's not a lot of interviews, but you find as much as you possibly can to just get all that they already spoke about on, because you're gonna bore them. So if you find an interview with them and they're being asked the same thing over and over and over again, it's like, so why made you get into film? When do you remember who was your first artist that ever inspired you? And you go back and you watch all these interviews, and they've been asked the same thing over and over again. So now you can take those questions and kind of change them a little bit. Give them a little bit more life, give them a little bit more personal. Maybe also, and I've done this in the past, the artist had mentioned something in an interview about something. I had a guest that was talking about sailing, and they mentioned it in passing, and that they love sailing, and then they went on and the interview went on. They didn't talk anymore about that. So I knew that this person loves sailing. So when in the middle, when it got, I said, and you love sailing, right? I heard you love sailing. Oh, I love sailing. And it opened them up. It got them so excited. They wanted to talk about sailing. We talked a few minutes about sailing, and now they're more open and free because they're comfortable doing something that they're really enjoying. And then you can kind of go in and ask them a little bit more personal questions if you want to go that route. I never go too personal. I asked them also beforehand, how personal do you want to get? I know you had some struggles. I had a singer that was a wonderful singer, and obviously I'm not going to ask her these personal questions on air without her knowing that I'm going to ask her these questions. She had a personal overcoming of a tragedy, of a struggle in her life. And so I asked her, I know you talked about that with me before, but do you want to talk about this? And she said, absolutely. That's part of why I'm here. I want to help people see and not fall into these pitfalls. So we had a very serious conversation. So we had a very serious conversation about it, and she turned out to be a great guest, and a very open. And a lot of people mentioned and commented about how amazing it was, her story, and how she overcame it. So the research part is very important. Get as much information as you possibly can. If you can get interviews, get interviews. Okay. And at the end here, when we wrap up, I'm going to give you 10 ways to improve your live stream or interviews, or even to just, if you're starting out, 10 ways that you can just avoid those pitfalls, right? That's going to be important too. My first interviews were horrible. I remember staying quiet because I remember hearing about it's better to listen, right? So I knew that going in. So they weren't terrible, terrible in the sense that I was just talking and blah, 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 right? Because I can't talk, obviously, as you can tell. I do this every morning at 7 a.m. So, but I knew to be quiet. I knew to listen to the story. I knew to let them kind of like do their thing. And that actually helped me a lot because I learned to listen, right? And that's another important thing that we're going to talk about. That's the next thing. So another important lesson is learning how to listen. Many interviewers focus so much on their next question, they miss most interesting parts of the conversation. Often the best moments happen when you follow up on something unexpected that the guest mentions. Uh, Active listening allows you to ask deeper questions, uncover powerful stories, and create a conversation that feels natural rather than scripted. Audiences can tell when a host is genuinely engaged, and that engagement helps create stronger interviews. So, guests are going to answer your questions. And if you're just looking down at your list because you want to get ready for the next question, but you're not listening to what they're saying, they could give you some golden nuggets that you can be like, ooh, I want to ask about that. And then the question, sometimes I'll have sometimes like 10 questions and I'll get to like two. I only do two questions because within those answers, so much opens up. And then you remember where you want to go and where you want to guide them and where they want to go and what they want to talk about. And you put those two things together, then you can guide the interview by listening really, really well and then asking questions based on the content that they're giving you. Man, it's so amazing what people say. It's just a joy when they say these, when they do these things. It's really, really a joy to be there. And you get these little golden nuggets, and you're like, oh man, I had no idea you were going to talk about that. In your head, you're saying, obviously, you don't want to say that out loud, but you say that, and you're like, oh wow, okay, I'm gonna ask about this because you're listening you know and remember, the questions are not that you're going to know what the questions are. You don't have to be looking down at what the next question is. It's not that serious, right? If they're talking, and you're engaged in a conversation, and then there's a lull, and now you got to get go to the next question, you can just be like, what I do is like, oh my gosh, I mean, that's so incredible. See, I'm looking down already. All right, the next question, I could say, wow, that's so amazing. I mean, I had no idea that you were doing that. Now let me ask you this. And then you go down to your question. You see, you incorporate the movements into it, because it's not that serious. You don't want to be like, yeah, right. Oh, I don't know if anybody remembers the Chris Farley, when he would interview people on Saturday Night Live, and he did the famous one with Paul McCartney. Go look at that one. And he's like nervous, and he's sweating, and he's beating himself up because he's asking stupid questions and all that stuff. So look at that interview and don't do that. But it was, of course, that was for comedic reasons, and it was hilarious. So the best interviews have the audience with something valuable. And this is another thing that I when I research the guest, and when I talk to them beforehand, sometimes I'll either send them a one sheet that I have that tells them exactly what the interviews, and in there I say, the reason for the show is to provide a valuable something to the audience, something that you've experienced that not a lot of people have, that they can learn from. That's the main goal of why I'm interviewing you, right? That's the main purpose. Obviously, I want to have a good interview. I want to have some fun. We want to do some laughs. I'm going to make some corny jokes, and hopefully people will laugh. If they don't laugh, even better, because I love when they don't laugh, because that makes it even funnier to me. So that to me is part of that whole thing. But I want to let them know that the golden nugget that they're holding, that they might not even know that they're holding it, that's what we're looking for. And that's the value that we're providing to the audience, right? We want to leave the audience with something that they can take away with that's valuable, whether it's a lesson about business, creativity, leadership, perseverance, or personal growth. Interviewers and listeners should walk away feeling like they've gained something useful. Great interviewers focus on serving the audience while helping guests tell their stories. When you approach interviews with curiosity, preparation, and a genuine desire to learn, every conversation becomes an opportunity to educate, inspire, and connect people through meaningful conversations. So that is the key thing. You want to make sure that the conversation stays fresh. It's meaningful. There's value there. The guest understands the value that they're providing, their responsibility, right? Because when you're a guest anywhere, I've been guest on podcasts, and I've been a guest on different things. When you're a guest there, they invited you because they want you to bring something, right? They want you to bring who you are, your experiences, and all these things. Um, um, oh, thank you. And you want to bring those experiences, right? So I think it's important to do that. So 10 ways to improve your live stream or podcast interviews. Okay. So number one, I've talked about this already. Research your guests thoroughly. That's the number one thing. That's the best thing I can give you, is that you want to have your research. You want to have your notes. You have a lot of tools today. I mean, back in the day, and of course I haven't been doing this for decades. I've done hundreds of interviews in the last maybe like 7 or 8 years. But you know I had Google, so I can research for stuff, right? I can research. I had their website. I can go to their website and read about their about page. I can go to YouTube and watch old videos and watch their clips on what they were doing and stuff. Now we have AI, where you can research and get more information on them, and get some insight, and get some writing, and get some questions tailored to what you think the audience might want to know, interesting tidbits. So there's a lot of ways you can research today. It doesn't have to take a long time. You can spend an hour doing it. Sometimes I spend even less than that. just because I have already know a lot about the guests, and I've researched. I watched a couple of interviews, and I can feel the tone. I can feel what they want to present. I'm like, yeah, this is going to be awesome. I'm really excited about it. And then I put it all together on a piece of paper. I'm old school. I'm not reading off the screen. I print out stuff, and I have it right in front of me. I like to do, and then I put this into a folder. My folder's like this thick already of all the shows, and I put it there. And then someday I can put all those together into something more interesting, like a big fat book. That'll be later on. Number two, ask open-ended questions. Questions that begin with how, why, or what usually create better conversations than a simple yes or no question. So give them questions like that. So, how did you? Why was it that you? What was the purpose for? Those kinds of questions. They give a lot. A lot comes out of those. If you say, so did you always like blues music? Yes. That will, you'll be, that'd be dead in the water. Trust me. You don't want to do that. Number three, listen more than you talk. Very important. Now, here, obviously, this is my own show. If I only listened here, it'd be a very weird show because I'm by myself here. But when you have a guest with you, listen more than you talk. Very important to understand that. Now, you want to engage, you want to bring your personality to it because that's why people are watching as well. Some people watch only because they like the personality. They like me. They like the little Puerto Rican from the Bronx. I don't know why, but they'll watch it, and you want to be engaging as well. So you want to add to certain stories. Maybe they tell a story that kind of triggers something in you, and you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. I want to talk about that. And then you start talking about that. And when you're interviewing somebody, I've interviewed legends, right? So if they're legendary artists, they've been asked questions millions of times, the same questions. Those are the harder interviews because you have somebody in your space that, man, what are you going to ask them? This is where the challenge is. So now your research, you have to find little tidbits in their interviews that you can you can grab and be like, hey, I noticed that you mentioned when you went to Europe one day and the drum set wasn't tuned. How do you prepare to tune your drums? If I interview a legendary drummer or musician or something, ask them specific about their technique. They love talking about their techniques. Audiences love to hear that insight behind the scenes of how they actually do certain things behind the scenes. I asked somebody once, what do you eat? Do you eat before you go on stage, or how much time between you go on stage do you eat? And they thought that was a great question. I was like, really? They're like, that's a great question, because if you eat right before you go on stage while you're moving around, it could really upset your stomach. If you eat way too early, then you'll be hungry on stage. That's a valid question. And that was actually got a big conversation started, right? So listen more. Number four, follow interesting trends. Don't be afraid to go off script if the shares something compelling. So if they say something interesting in the conversation, you'd be like, "Oh yeah, talk more about that," or "Oh, I didn't know that. That's very interesting." So, and then if you have maybe if that triggers a story for you, you can tell them, "Yeah, something like that happened to me where blah 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 blah. Let's talk a little bit about that because I think that's interesting." And then you open it up to that conversation. Number five, create a comfortable environment. Well, I do live streams here on a computer, so hopefully they're in a comfortable environment where they are, but that doesn't mean anything. The environment you're creating is here, it's a virtual one. So this has to be comfortable, right? Not where they physically are, not where you physically are. Someday I want to have a studio where I'm doing physical interviews like Johnny Carson did, and David Letterman, and Conan O'Brien, my three favorite hosts. I would love to do that. Actually, I have also Dick Cavett is another one of my favorite hosts. So those are my four favorite, top four. So you want to create that comfortable environment. Number six, focus on stories, not just facts. Facts can be very boring. Share stories are memorable and often contain more values than just lessons. Oh, my camera is freaking out here. That's weird. Sorry, folks. I don't know what's going on there. Camera is bugging out. Hold on one second. This is a live show, everyone. A live show. I'm still here. This is live. I'm sorry. All right. Think that did. All right. Let's continue there. Sorry about that, folks. Technical. That's so funny. Technical is coming up. So, okay. I was up to number 6. Focus on stories, not just facts, right? Have them tell stories about their experiences. Those are always a lot of fun. Number 7, think about the audience. Okay. Ask questions that viewers and listeners would want answered. Now, this is a tricky one because sometimes the audience doesn't really know what they want. You have to kind of give them the information. So you have to tread very lightly on this one. You may want, if somebody is a real estate person, right? I've interviewed some real estate people, right? Very successful ones. So you want to actually ask them questions about specific things that people want to know. What's the biggest unit that we should invest in right off the bat? What are the best type of loans that we should get our clients to get? What do you think about the interest rates? And there's certain specific things that the audience that are real estate people are might want to know, right? At the same time, you also want the audience may not really know what they want to ask, or what they want to hear. So you have to kind of use your own skill set and ask questions. Also, what's it like to be a real estate agent? How long did it take you to actually just have this as your primary source of income? Which a lot of real estate agents, when they start, that's something that they really want to know about. So I'll just ask questions that I think that I would want to know if I was going into real estate, which I was a real estate agent. So it does actually help a little bit that I had that experience. But you want to be able to do that. Number 8, improve your technical setup right now, right? So my camera just right now crapped out on me. It started doing all these weird flickering things. I had to disconnect and come back again, and now it's fixed, right? That happens. You're gonna have technical things, but I mean, good audio. I got a nice mic, good video, good lighting. The internet connectivity helps create a better experience for everyone. I've had technical disasters happen with like bigger interviews, and it is frightening. It is terrible. I hate it when it happens, but the guests were always good about it, and it never really it turned out to be a fun thing, so it was okay. But you got to keep it together and you got to act quickly. You saw when I had my camera issue right now, I didn't just wait around. I went immediately. I went and I did some stuff and fixed it with, under a minute. It was corrected because you don't want to wait around. So you want to move quickly if there's a technical issue of any kind. But you want to do all your testing right beforehand. I test my camera, I test my audio, I test my speakers in case because I'm playing some stuff out of my speaker, my opening. I want to make sure I could hear it. All those things I test right before every single show. And it takes only like 30 seconds to just test everything out. Testing, see the meter, hear it, and you're good to go. But definitely get a good technical setup. Number 9, review your past interviews. Watch or listen to previous episodes and identify where you can improve. I never do this, but I think it's important to do it. But unfortunately, I don't do it. Now, I've had my co-host George Batista on some of my shows in the past has done that, and he's gone back and he said, your mic went in and out a little bit, so I'll go and I'll fix it. It's very important to do that for the technical issues. For me to go back and listen to myself ask questions and talk, it annoys me because I know I'm never as going to be as good as what I want to be, and it just pisses me off. So I'm telling you that one. If you want to go back and when you're first starting, you should go back and listen. I did that in the beginning. Go back and listen, and then realize, okay, I need to have more pause. I need to listen better and figure that out. But now I'm just bad about doing that. Number 10, stay curious. Always stay curious in the interviews. The best interviewers never stop learning. Approach every conversation with genuine curiosity and a desire to discover something new. Very, very important. You want to actually you're there to learn too. You're there to ask questions. You're there because you're a fan of the person or you're going to become a fan of the person. You want to learn something. So always be curious about what they're about, what they're talking about, what their goals are, what everything. You want to be curious. So stay curious during every single interview. All right. So those were the 10. I hope those are helpful for you. And closing thoughts here, a great interviewer doesn't just collect answers. They help uncover stories, lessons, and ideas that might otherwise remain hidden. The more you prepare, listen, and stay curious, the more your live streams and podcasts will become valuable resources to your audiences and memorable experiences to your guests. I cannot tell you how many guests at the end of the interviews have said, "This was one of my favorite interviews." And me and George, when we were doing interviews together, and we're going to be doing more of those, but um, when we're doing them together, we had so many people just say at the end, and we were saying to ourselves, I wish they would have said it on the air. But a few of them did say it on the air. We have those, but just wonderful time that they had. And it made George and I, after they left, and I was like, man, that legendary person who's been interviewed thousands of times said that our interview was one of their favorite interviews they've ever done. And why? Because we did these 10 steps. We took we took care, we stayed curious. Simple things. It's all right here on this episode. Go back and listen to it, take notes, write down and get your episode. My last episode was about how to start a successful podcast. And today we're talking about how to be a good interviewer. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the business side of creativity. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. I have 20 episodes that I'm going to be doing on the JHS talent management journey. And these are some of the ones that have to do with the live stream, because that was a big part of JHS talent management, my agency, and a few other things as well. So all these things wrapped up together are going to have 20 episodes. I'm going to have them on a little playlist somewhere, and then you can go back and listen to these 20 episodes that I hope are become lessons that we can actually teach people how to do all these things, and to how to have an agency. Because today, in today's world, we got to have our own agencies. Unfortunately, right? The big agencies are oversaturated, and we have the abilities now and the tools to do these things on our own. And that's why I'm putting these 20 episodes together. So we're up to this was episode number 14. Tomorrow we'll be doing number 15, and that will be the last one of the week. And I got 5 more after that next week, and then we'll be wrapped up, and then we'll go back to business as usual. All right, friends. Whew. Thank you so much for tuning in this morning. I appreciate you all very, very much. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you tomorrow morning. God bless you all. Take care of each other. And as always, peace.